do you see any realistic path for modern economies, this one in particular, to reclaim a more public control over money and credit?
That would take a revolution. And that's not, I don't see any, this is not a revolutionary situation yet. People don't even think in terms of the fact that it's possible to have an alternative. That was Margaret Thatcher's rhetoric. She kept saying there is no alternative. And economists say there is no alternative. You don't want to be socialist, do you? You don't want to be Marxist. As if it's unthinkable to become the kind of an economy using finance for productive economic growth in the way that China does, because that's called socialism. And as a democracy, we're an oligarchy. We're the exact opposite of socialism. And the Americans have defined a free market as one without any government interference. The government doesn't create money. The central bank creates money. And the role of the central bank in the United States was created to take control of money out of the hands of the Treasury and put it in the hands of its member banks and central banks, starting with the Federal Reserve as the basic model in 1913. Central banks protect their customers, the commercial banks. And actually, that seemed to be a progressive step at the time. And the final chapter in my book is all about the creation of the Federal Reserve, that the Treasury Department was, because of the Federalist, Democratic political struggles and the anti-banking politics of the United States in the 19th century, the Treasury was locked into a hard money uh, uh, philosophy where the big source of government revenue was increasingly the tariff, as Donald Trump has found. Before there was a income tax in 1913, and all the tariffs had to be paid in coin. In specie, meaning gold or silver coin. So the Treasury and the government finances were based on coinage, and the problem was that this created a shortage of credit. You need paper credit in order to have enough credit to enable the economies to grow beyond the gold and the silver supply you had. And it was the banks that said, let us create paper currency. Well, the Democrats and much of the public said, we've seen what bankers do. Bankers are exploitative. They try to cheat. They're corrupt. They try to make money for themselves, not the economy. We don't want the banks to have any power at all. Leave it in the hands of the Treasury. Well, that became economically self-defeating. The government tried to solve the problem by monetizing silver, and is in silver mining increased the supply of silver. The price between silver and gold varied, and people would buy silver and convert it at the official price for gold and just drain the gold out of the treasury. Bimetallism didn't work. You needed, if you're going to have a metallic currency, it has to be either silver or gold. It can't be both at a fixed rate. So otherwise you'll have arbitrage. And I describe all of the techniques of this in my chapter. I mean, I know I've moved very fast in this discussion, and people who have not studied the details of monetary history may not be able to follow it, but it's in my book explained much more clearly. You need a paper currency, and that means debt in order to have enough credit for the economy to work. To work. The problem is that the credit is on the debt side of the balance sheet is beyond the ability to pay, and the government is blocked from doing for America what the Babylonian rulers in the whole Bronze Age did, writing down the debts to the ability to pay. And once you realize that there's an inherent economic tendency in all economies for the last 5,000 years for debts to grow faster than the ability to pay. The problem is, what are you going to do when a debt can't be paid? There are two things. Either you impose the creditor law, and so you said, okay, if the debtor can't pay, the creditor gets to foreclose on the land, foreclose on their labor, foreclose on the property, and leave the creditor with nothing. We don't throw the debtor with nothing. We don't throw debtors in jail anymore, like we did in Charles Dickens' time in the 19th century. But we take their property and give it to the creditors. Or you decide that most of the economy is in debt. Corporations are in debt. Individual families need debt in order to break even. If they can't pay the debts, rather than letting the debt service crowd out their payment on basic living costs, on keeping themselves alive, if they can't live and pay their medical care and their rents and their taxes without going into the debts should be written down to the ability to be paid. That was the moral principle, and that was the principle of that Jesus was fighting about over the Jubilee year. He wanted to write down the debts that were oppressing the Jewish population as a whole, as the Bible is described through all the warnings of the prophets, all of the middle or early books of the Jewish Bible. Well, who are you going to run the economy for? Will it be for the creditors or for the debtors? Well, if most of the economy are debtors and the creditor class is increasingly narrow, 10%, now it's only the 1%, now it ends up with a 0.1%. You're going to have a polarized economy. And do you really want your financial system and your economy and your political system to concentrate all the wealth in the hands of a very small creditor class that's going to use its creditor claims on the government, on corporations, on families, and on public infrastructure to make money for itself? Or are you going to want credit to be used to make the economy grow? Well, that's the difference between the American growth system and the Chinese growth system. And nobody dares say that's the difference. They can say, oh, it's capitalism versus socialism. But it's really finance is the key to this difference between the U.S. and Western economies on the one hand, and China's socialist economy, which is really, you could call it an industrial socialist economy, or just an industrial economy with banking is a public utility. You can use whatever rhetoric you want, but you have to realize that there's a reason why China's economy is growing and the Western economies are polarizing and impoverishing the population at large by forcing the population, the corporate sector, governments themselves at the state and local level, as well as the public, the national level, into debt. That's the choice. And that should be what economic models are all about. But if the economic models say economies work on barter, we'll leave money out of the picture and debt out of the picture because we owe the debt to ourselves, then imagine trying to program automatic intelligence into that tunnel vision. You're going to have a self-justification of the road to impoverishment and austerity.